Welcome to Leaping Larry's Revolutionary Reading Theatre.
Okay, welcome in. We're ready for the reading. As we usually do, we read a little bit of, communist, decolonial, revolutionary theory in the morning. Get us all started. And we'll go on to the news after that. Right, Bug? And of course, if you need to catch up on my reads, if you've missed any of them in the past, curious what else we've read, you can always go right here to my channel on YouTube. Big Gang. That's good. And I have a playlist right here, live readings. Is all the ones we've done so far. Do I think a socialist revolution can be created in present conditions without the main focus on the proletariat? What do you mean by it? Depends, first of all, how you're defining proletariat, and where do you mean by here, like the US and Canada? I mean, the main focus has to be, of course, on working class ideology, but the possessors of working class ideology, as you can call it, or proletariat ideology. Well, the U.S. is vastly different than Europe, but yeah, you absolutely need to focus on proletariat, which means the revolutionary class. Like if you don't have a focus on class, then what you're for is class collaboration, which is counter revolution. The complicated thing about North America, as I always point out, is that people have reactionary consciousness, large amounts of the working class, because of social democracy, because of settler colonialism, so on and so forth. So that's why we can't base it purely on people's class origin, like what class they come from, but rather what their ideas are, what their ideology is. Like that's why some of the old definitions that Marx used, like lumpen proletariat, is somewhat limited in understanding our own society. While that might have been a useful analysis in Marx's day, like the problem with stuff like his analysis of the lumpen proletariat applied to our conditions again is that much of the settler working class has a reactionary consciousness and is against socialism in a very militant way. So that's why I say, like, here in a settler colonial society, the colonized people and the formerly oppressed people, native people, black people, are going to be the ones who are going to lead the revolution, right? Whether certain sections, whether like certain sections are themselves working class by the classic Marxist definition or not. Because they have a more proletarian consciousness. That's why I really like the stress that Juche philosophy places on ideology, you know, and explaining that the role of ideology in understanding social development, revolutionary changes. So with that in mind, we're working our way through this book here on the Juche philosophy by Kim Jong Il. It's a compilation. Last time we finished the work on some problems of the ideological foundation of socialism, and next we're gonna do on having a correct viewpoint and understanding of the Juche philosophy, which is a talk to senior officials at the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea on October 25th, 1990. Oh yeah, and I made to, but that way when I cut this part out later, it's fine. Recently, I've read articles on the Juche idea written by some social scientists and found that they do not correctly explain the originality and superiority of the Juche philosophy in conformity with the party's policies. This proves they themselves still do not have a correct viewpoint and understanding of the Juche philosophy. In connection with this, I would like to speak about some problems arising in correctly explaining and propagating the Juche philosophy. First of all, we must correct the tendency to explain the superiority and originality of Juche idea from the point of view of Marxist dialectical materialism. I once referred to the need to correctly understand the originality of Juche idea because in the past some social scientists tended to explain this idea in the framework of Marxist dialectical materialism. But it seems to me that they still do not have a correct understanding of this problem. In order to prove the justice and superiority of Juche philosophy, we must clearly understand the limitations of the preceding philosophy and consider this philosophy in correlation with the latter. Only when the Juche philosophy is studied in comparison with Marxist philosophy, limitations of which lies in the fact that it regards the development of all things, the process of the history of nature, can its superiority be clearly elucidated. And if you want to learn more about that, I recommend going back and looking at our other ones where we talked about how certain historical limitations and the limitation in the view of social history is what has led, or is what allows, or rather, many opportunists to distort it to their own view, even to the point of actually causing the overthrow of several socialist countries. And the reason, of course, just to put it like bluntly, the reason, of course, you can't understand Juche philosophy through the framework of dialectical materialism alone is the same reason why you couldn't like understand dialectical materialism through Hegel's dialectics alone, because Marxism has developed it further. And while Juche philosophy is not a development of Marxist Leninism itself, just like any other philosophy in human history, there is derivations and there is inheritance, right? The reason why what constitutes an original philosophy is that it asks a fundamental different question than Marxism. Where Marxism focused on answering the question of idealism versus materialism, which is primary. Juche philosophy, starting with that Marxist viewpoint as the premise, asks who is the master of the world and what causes their change and development. Again, you can learn more about that earlier on. I will more clearly label this work, like I know all of the parts are labeled on Juche philosophy. I'll also label what work we're on for each part as well. I think that will make it more clear. Barry Smash, welcome in, comrade. Some people attempt to explain the fundamental principles of the Juche philosophy. Oh, well, that might change, though. That might change now, Barry, including the essential characteristics of humanity. From the point of view of the general law of the development of the material world. I mean, we can certainly use a different term than proletarian, absolutely, to describe what we want to talk about, right? 100%. I mean, Juche philosophy, none of these ever use that word. Including the essential characteristics of humanity. From the point of view of the general law of the development of the material world, instead of explaining them by clarifying the law of social movement. Like your In the final analysis, this can be construed as being tantamount to trying to explain the Juche philosophy from the viewpoint of development of Marxist dialectical materialism, not as a completely original philosophy. It makes it impossible to clarify the originality of Juche philosophy correctly. Overcoming the limitations of the preceding theory, which regards the development of things as an objective process of the history of nature, presents itself as an urgent requirement in the present revolutionary practice. At present, bourgeois thinkers, revisionists, and reformists are infusing people with spontaneity and the matter first doctrine, considering all things and phenomena from the biological and evolutionary point of view and the vulgar materialistic viewpoint. In explaining and propagating the Juche philosophy, we ought to direct the spearhead of criticism to such a biological and vulgar materialistic outlook on the world. We must have a correct understanding of the law of the unity of opposites and the struggle between them. The fact that the Juche philosophy is considered largely in relation with Marxist dialectical materialism can also be seen in the explanation of this law. The main content of Marxist dialectical materialism is the principle of the unity of opposites and of the struggle between them. However, this is not a problem which should be considered simply from a scientific point of view. Like other theoretical problems of Marxism-Leninism, the law of the unity of opposites and of the struggle between them must be historically considered, from the point of view of the revolutionary practice. Importance was attached to this law in Marxist dialectical materialism. This is due to the fact that it was an important and historic task to elucidate philosophically the socio-economic contradictions of the then capitalist society and the law of class struggle. Therefore, I think the principle of the unity of struggle between opposites elucidated by Marxist philosophy has many unreasonable points in clarifying the law of development of socialist society at present. So, to clarify what he's saying here, he's saying that you run into, and he's not the only one to have said this, by the way, but what Kim Jong-il here is pointing out is that Marxist philosophy, and particularly the unity of opposites, struggle between them, runs into many limitations when you have built a socialist society and are progressing past capitalism. And that's, again, as we talked about in the last work, to be understood, of course, because neither Marx nor Lenin lived in a socialist society long enough to give any more than like predictions about what socialist society might be like, right? And Stalin was really great and improved Lenin on the national question, but didn't really create a lot of original theory himself. But even in economic problems of socialism in the USSR, Stalin talks about how there really needs to be a new theory that analyzes the new conditions they are facing under socialism. Of course, with de-Stalinization that followed, that work was essentially just ignored. Or the people who did read it and agree with it were just left out of the discourse or overwhelmed by the counter-revolutionary currents. That is why we did not mention this principle much when explaining the theory of Juche philosophy. Today, our country is confronted with the important revolutionary task of building socialism and reunifying. Sorry, I lost my. Reunifying the country, although not peacefully anymore. Under these circumstances, we must think of what theoretical significance emphasis on the principle of the unity of opposites and of the struggle between them as an important philosophical problem will have, and how it will affect the revolution and construction. If this problem is explained in a misguided way, it will give people the impression that we are engrossed in idle talk on a philosophical problem that does not suit real life and may exert an undesirable influence on those who are fighting for national reunification. We must never indulge in empty theories and talks which are not helpful to the revolution and construction, nor must we try to follow the existing principles or the theories of others which do not suit us. Next, it is important to have a correct understanding of the essential characteristics of humanity. Welcome in, Sam. These characteristics are clarified in detail in the party documents, which have already been published. However, some articles which explain the Juche idea do not accord with these documents. In interpreting the essential qualities of humanity, some people state that humanity has common features with other organisms, and that at the same time they have an attribute fundamentally different from that of the latter in the level of development, and explain the differences between the essential attributes of humanity and those of other organisms as the differences in their level of development. We must not understand humanity's essential attributes as a development and perfection of the natural attributes, which organisms in general have. Of course, it can be said that when considered from the viewpoint of a biological being, humanity's body is superior to that of other organisms in the level of development. However, when they are considered from the viewpoint of a social being, humanity is fundamentally different from all other organisms, for the attributes peculiar to them. Regarding humanity's essential characteristics as the differences in the level of development of organisms is an evolutionary method of consideration. Although humanity is a product of evolution, the essential attributes of humanity, a social being, the independence, creativity, and consciousness, both knowledge and ideological consciousness, are what is being referred to here, by the way, by essential attributes. So, although humanity is a product of evolution, the essential attributes of humanity, a social being, are not the products of evolution. They have formed and developed socially, historically, through the course of us developing in a society together, collective, and not in like group lives like animals live again, because we're constantly because humanity has that demand for independence. We're always struggling against even social fetters which restrict us, whereas animals in group lives accept their positions. Hi, Bog. Are you telling me something? What are you doing? You agree. You're licking the screen because you agree. Good girl. I mentioned it long ago. However, some people try to regard humanity's essential attributes as which organisms in general have. Sorry, as a matter of differences in the level of development of the attributes which organisms in general have. Sorry, she was distracting me there. This proves that they are still attempting to consider humanity's essential characteristics with the evolutionary methodology. It is also wrong method of consideration to try and seek the essential characteristics of humanity, who is distinguished from an animal in the diversity of biological and social components, and in the complexity of the ways of their combination. As a matter of fact, all things have definite components as well as combination and structure. Therefore, in clarifying the characteristics of things, we can deliberate in comparison whether their components as well as their combination and structure are complex or simple. According to the degree of their complexity, we can explain the characteristics of different material elements. However, whether the components and the combination and structure are complex or simple is the question which can only be raised between those material elements that can be compared with each other. Humanity is the only social being in the world. Therefore, we cannot compare them with an animal by considering their components and their combination and structure. The fundamental differences between a social being and a natural being cannot be correctly clarified only by examining the diversity and complexity of the components, their combination, and structure. All right, we're on an ad break, everybody. Take 5, or rather, take 3. Bug, take 3. Hey, Rob, welcome in, comrade. Good day to be indigenous. Bug agrees. Right, Bug? Don't you? You agree. You agree with your little tinny tin tin. You're such a little... You're such a little foof. Aren't ya? You're a little bug, that's for sure. I hope everybody is enjoying the read so far. Feel like Bug might be slightly distracting me, but it's worth it, maybe? Because she's so goddamn cute. Right, Bug? Distracting all the people? Keeping them interested? That is exactly what she does. She's too cute. I can't wait to watch that episode later of Bulletproof Wall. I hope all of you have been here while we've been watching that. Who's been watching that that's missing? Oh, Cinnamon. Oh, oh. Cinnamon is missing from our watch. Hopefully she can make it before we start the watch of Bulletproof Wall. Been a really good show. About the Japanese occupation of Korea and a revolutionary who's working undercover, pretending to be a collaborator when really he's, of course, working with the Korean People's Army. Can I ask why Juche idea is better than traditional Marxism and Leninism? Well, I mean, to put it simply, I mean that's I've been talking about this for a whole bunch of reads now, which you can get on my channel on my reading list. You can also get it on my YouTube as well. I have the e-readings there. But I mean, essentially, because it builds on Marxism Leninism, it advances scientific socialist theory. So why reject studying like why reject studying something like Juche, something that improves their understanding of scientific socialism, and because it's not Marxism Leninism, when you could, study it and improve their also your understanding of Marxism Leninism at the same time. Yeah, I do plan on kind of talking about that once we get to the gaming, Rob. I plan on mentioning that. Talk about that when we get to it. When we get to the gaming, that way only the hardcores stay in. Only the hardcores stay for the gaming. So we'll talk about it then. Best way, I think. Some articles explaining the Juche idea write that social wealth also belonged to the social being. However, it is a wrong viewpoint to identify humanity with social wealth created by them. Humanity is a social being. This implies that they are a being who lives in a social relationship. That's interesting, but it also adopts fascistic sentiments? No, what the fuck does that even mean? Going on, you're on the side-eyeing you now. What are you talking about, fascistic tendency? As humanity is a social being, they have independence, creativity, and consciousness, attributes which are peculiar to them and which other material beings cannot have. However, if the wealth created by humanity is also considered to belong to the social being, there will be no fundamental difference between humanity and wealth. It will be impossible to give an answer to the question of on what the essential characteristics peculiar to humanity are based. Next is the correlation. Next, it is necessary to have a correct understanding of the correlation between the transformation of nature, humanity, and society. These undertakings are the three areas of human activity for realizing human independence. It is necessary to understand correctly, from the viewpoint of revolutionary practice, what position each of these three transformations holds in humanity's social activity, and how they are related to each other. But one cannot give people a correct understanding of the three transformations if, apart from the specific revolutionary practice, one simply explains them in such a way that they are all conducted simultaneously, instead one beginning after the completion of another. Of course, we cannot mechanically say that after one of the three transformations has been completed, another one is conducted. However, we must take into consideration that one may be given more prominence depending on the stage of revolutionary development. This can be clearly seen from the practical process of the developing revolution. In the period of socialist revolution, the problem of liquidating exploitation and oppression and achieving the socio-political independence of the masses, in other words, the problem of transforming society, presents itself as an important matter. Following the establishment of the socialist system, the problem of transforming nature and humanity, for freeing people from the fetters of nature and outmoded ideas and culture, presents itself as a more important task. Again, by outdated ideas and culture, we're talking about reactionary bourgeois ideas, which no include the justification for a class-based society. It has way more nationalistic tendencies. No, it doesn't. Every single Marxist revolution has been started by a struggle for national liberation. That's bullshit. Stalin wrote about the national question just the same as Kim Jong-il did. The only one who said fucking the proletarians have no nation is Marx, a European. Don't conflate don't conflate bourgeois phony nationalism with actual revolutionary nationalism. That's a racist, chauvinistic viewpoint. That's some Trotskyist bullshit, if I say so. This can be clearly seen from the practical process. Exactly, BB. From the practical process of the developing revolution. In the period of socialist revolution, the problem of liquidating exploitation and oppression and achieving the socio-political independence of the masses of the people. In other words, the problem of transforming society presents itself as an important matter. In fact, saying that the proletarian doesn't have a nation, by the way, absolutely ignores First Nations, the actual First Nations, you know? And and again, in view of it being chauvinistic, it's like a Eurocentric viewpoint. So is the idea, as I pointed out before, that all nations emerged in the struggle against feudalism. Excuse me. But again, as First Nations prove, and as we keep telling people, no, they weren't. First Nations here were the First Nations. And it wasn't against the struggle against feudalism. Right? Bug? Ow. Europeans used that in the struggle against feudalism. Ow, bug, why are you biting me? In the period of socialist revolution, the problem of liquidating exploitation and oppression and achieving socio-political independence. Oh well, that's perfectly timed, Radispy. Welcome in, welcome in. Let's you can get a view of bug. Bug. In the period of the socialist revolution, the problem of liquidating exploitation and oppression and achieving the socio-political independence of the masses of people, in other words, the problem of transforming society, presents itself as an important matter. Biting me area? Following the establishment of the socialist system, the problem of transforming nature and humanity for freeing people from the fetters of outmoded ideas and culture presents itself as a more important task. This period, nature and humanity are transformed through ideological, technological, and cultural revolutions, and society is transformed through the consolidation and development of the socialist system. And not in a revolutionary way. Ow. Therefore, when discussing the three transformations, if they are explained merely from a logical point of view, disregarding their historical sequence and peculiarities, such a theory will, in the long run, be isolated from the revolutionary practice. The problem of the three areas of social life must not be explained mechanically either. Some people assert that social life must not be considered by dividing it into two aspects, material and spiritual, but that it should be divided into three aspects, economic, ideological, cultural, and political. Why are you biting me, huh? Why? They must not suggest the problem like that. Of course, it is reasonable to view human life by dividing it into three aspects: economic, ideological, and cultural slash political. Sorry, ideological and cultural are together, and political. Our party's documents have also expounded it in that way. So we have economic life, ideological life, which includes cultural life, and political life. Nevertheless, we cannot regard it as a mistake to divide human life into two aspects, material and spiritual. The problem does not lie in how many areas social life is divided into, but in the view of dividing it into two aspects, material and spiritual, is counterpoised to that of dividing it into three aspects, economic, ideological, and cultural, and political. We always say that people's ideological and spiritual life and the material life constitute the two aspects of social life. Moreover, we maintain at all times that the independence of the masses of people must be realized in the fields of their ideological and spiritual life as well as of their material life. Like, why are you being so bad? Oh. This conforms import. What are you doing? Get out of here with this. Why are you biting? Close your mouth. Oh, bug. Are you serious? Okay. Moreover, we maintain at all times that the independence of the masses of people must be realized in the field of their ideological and spiritual life as well as their material life. You look at this cat. This conforms in import to the statement that the two fortresses, in other words, the ideological and material fortresses, must all be occupied in the building of socialism and communism. Seriously, Radisby. He loves that finger food, I guess. Hey, Mug. In other words, the ideological and material fortresses must all be occupied in the building of socialism and communism. Hey, Mama, welcome in. When viewed on the basis of what has been mentioned above, it cannot be said to be wrong to divide social life into two areas, material and spiritual. Matter of fact, people's political and cultural life is expressed in ideological and spiritual life. Therefore, it is by no means unreasonable to divide social life into two areas, ideological and spiritual life, and material life, by including political and cultural life in the former. When we speak about two fortresses of communism, we also express them as the ideological fortress or the political and ideological fortress, as well as the material fortress. Accordingly, in order to make social life correspond with the idea of two fortresses of communism and content, we must have, as a matter of course, divide it into two areas. We cannot take issue with whether one divides social life into two areas in a wider sense or into three areas in greater detail. We cannot say which is right and which is wrong. In explaining the correlation between economic life and ideological and cultural life and political life, it is not right to emphasize only the identity of each of these three kinds of life. Claim that one of these cannot determine another is not only an ambiguous expression from the standpoint of the working class, but does not conform to the principle of the Juche idea either. We say that independence is the lifeblood of people, and particularly stress that realizing socio-political independence is a matter of priority in the struggle to achieve independence for the masses of people. We say that independence is the lifeblood of people, we mean socio-political independence. However rich a person is in the material aspect, they can never claim to lead a life as befits a human if they are not worthwhile in the social and political spheres, as well as the ideological and cultural field. Political life and ideological life play a leading and decisive role in social life. Therefore, underestimating the principal significance of political life and ideological life, and only emphasizing that the three kinds of life each have their own importance, is of no use in practice. At present, the international situation is very complex, and the international controversies are being conducted between revolution and counter revolution, between socialism and capitalism. And under this situation, revolutionary people and communists are seeking the right path they should follow. Under the present grave situation, the question of who conquers whom arises between socialism and capitalism. We must thoroughly defend socialism under the revolutionary banner of the Juche idea. Juche idea, our party's outlook on the world, the guiding idea of our times, which illuminates the absolutely correct way of achieving independence for the masses of people. It is the banner of the revolutionary people's cause of independence, the banner of socialism. We must ensure that all party members and the working people have a firm conviction of the superiority and greatness of the Juche idea. Moreover, now that we confront the serious question of whether we defend the cause of socialism or not, in the face of imperialist strategy of quote unquote peaceful transition, we must encourage all social scientists and information workers to write and speak thoroughly in the interests of the revolution and in accordance with the party's policies. There we go. That marks the end of that talk. Next time, tomorrow, we will be reading The Juche Philosophy is an Original Revolutionary Philosophy, which, of course, was a discourse published in a magazine of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea from 1996. Yo, I hope you enjoyed our read for today. I know Bug did. To Bug.